everyone. I've always been a fan of Star Trek, but there's always been that one episode in Next Generation that always bothered me, and that episode is called The Force of Nature. The premise of this episode is that warp drive is damaging space, which is causing a subspace rift. My issue with this episode is I never really discussed this subject after this Next Generation episode, besides one other episode in Voyager. In this video, I really want to take a deeper look into this Next Generation episode to really find out how warp drive is damaging space, and also look into how this affects the Star Trek universe overall. Since the creators of Star Trek abandoned the story after The Force of Nature was aired on TV, I want to make some conclusions on my own on why the Federation would not make the warp drive issue more of a priority. The plot of this episode begins when the USS Enterprise was sent to the Cares Corridor to find a medical ship called the USS Fleming. The corridor is a narrow region of space with a depth of 12.23 light years. It's the only route through this sector that's free from Tetryon fields. This is the only area where ships can use their warp drives. During the search to find the Fleming, they discovered sibling scientists that were using ship disabling mines to disable ships to force the Federation to send a ship to investigate. The siblings were hoping to convince the Federation ship to look into their research that warp drive technology was damaging space and causing a subspace rift. Picard agreed to have Data look through their research to see if their claim was accurate. The siblings' data was subjective, and there was a lot of questions left unanswered. Time was needed to look into this issue, but this was not enough for the sister, so she took her ship into space and overloaded her warp drive. By doing this, she proved her point and caused a subspace rift, proving that warp drive was damaging space. To limit the damage, the Federation Council enacted a rule limiting Federation ships at a speed of warp 5 and can only increase their speed in extreme circumstances. The area of space that was found sensitive to warp fields would be restricted to essential travel only. One of the main problems the Federation will have to face after this ruling: will the other warp traveling species follow the Federation directive? Worf stated that the Klingons will follow the Federation's suggestion, but it's unknown if the other species will follow. This could lead to huge issues later on. My only issue with this story is that it claims that warp drive technology has only been around for 3 centuries, and only recently they noticed the effects of warp drive technology. The issue with this part is that we know that warp drive technology has been around a lot longer than just 3 centuries, and governments before the Federation was using warp drive technology. You would think that past governments would have came across this issue with warp drive technology and would have reported it, or came up with a solution to fix this issue. But through my research, there hasn't been a past government that came across this issue. There are 2 explanations that could explain this. The first one is that space requires a constant exposure to warp fields for a couple of centuries to see any real damage to space. The second reason is that warp fields slowly damage space and it takes a millennium to see any real damage. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. There was an unpublished addition to the Star Trek Voyager Technical Guide suggesting that the variable geometry pylon technology introduced to the Federation starships will stop warp fields having a negative impact to space. But this was never published and is not considered canon. To be honest, it doesn't make any sense because the main function of a pylon is to improve the engine's efficiency for long journeys. Nothing about this definition explains how this technology will stop warp fields having a negative impact in space. But what do I know? It's a fictional story and the writers can say whatever they want. After our deep dive in this episode, now we have to logically figure out why the Federation was not making the warp drive issue a main priority, and why it was rarely discussed in the other 2 TV shows after Next Generation. The easy answer is that the writers did not want to overcomplicate the storyline and chose to forget about this episode, but that's an easy explanation. Another explanation would be that they had to worry about the Dominion and fighting a war against them. It kind of makes sense because the Federation was losing the war against the Dominion, so they had to use all their resources to survive. A good explanation for the Voyager is that since they were so far away from home, is that it classified as extreme circumstances to use high warp speed to get home. Eventually the warp drive issue will be fixed over time, and the Federation does have time. After and even before Next Generation, we're shown that the Federation was working on other technologies such as transwarp and slipstream technology. Eventually the Federation will switch to another traveling technology due to the speed that the other technology provides and the lack of damage it causes to space. I would love to hear your thoughts on the different traveling technology the Federation can use as a replacement. Thank you for watching this video, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you have any other video ideas, please let me know in the comment section below. Also, please check out these other 2 videos if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching Utopian Broadcast Channel. Hope to see you next time on my channel. Thank you.